Hello, everyone. This is the Eddie Network Podcast, and I'm your host, Ed Brenegar. My guest today is someone I know well. He's my cousin, Stewart, and we gathered yesterday for a little celebration of his mother and my aunt, and he'll say a little bit more about this as we begin. But Stewart and I have had many conversations over the years, and the one we're going to have today is very similar to one we had yesterday where we talk about people who are at work and what is possible. And he has spent a career in a world that is very unfamiliar to me, but he talks about how to lead and how to manage people in a very complex environment. So I think you're going to enjoy my conversation with my cousin, Stewart Brenegar. Hi, Stewart. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Ed.
Why is it that we're together today? What is it that brought us?
Well, fortunately, we got together to honor passing of my mom with a celebration of life yesterday with a broad reach of family, both yours and mine, and those that loved her, and just had a great opportunity to experience somebody that influenced us all. And I think that's kind of what you and I are going to talk about today, anyways, just who influences and how.
It was a fantastic day. And just so we're clear, your mother, Jean, was married to my father's brother, David.
Correct.
And David died about, 25 years, 30 years ago?
30 years ago.
35 years ago, I guess it was. And he was a great guy. And I don't know if you remember that when I was in high school, he lent me his motorcycle while you were moving.
That's
you
right.
all were moving from Jackson, Mississippi to
Triumph
Newport.
250. You're lucky you still got a right leg from kick-starting the thing.
Well, I wrecked that thing so many times. I had it for a month, and I said, "Come back, come take it over." But yeah, we had a great time yesterday, and it was great to honor Jean, who is one of the great people that I've ever known.
Yes, she was.
So, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with your life, and because you had an interesting life, and it's.
I have, of course, right now I'm sitting as a retired shipbuilder. Spent 45 years building nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers in a pretty amazing, dynamic environment. Loved most moments there. There's a few I didn't love as much, but came into place just wanting to be the best machinist that ever walked in the door, and left as construction director on the newest aircraft carrier. Took her to sea, and a nice culmination of a broad reach of people, and it was all people that you see down there. The shipbuilding art, it's part art, part science, part witchcraft, if you will, to build a ship, and it doesn't get done without people.
So when you're building like an aircraft carrier, how many people does it take to build an aircraft carrier?
It's thousands. So, there's a lot of perception that, technology and sophistication can rue the day, and it's vital to build one these days, but it still becomes a highly people-centric business, and that's really what brings most of these patriots to work each day is the work, the camaraderie, and aligning thousands of people to a single mission is not an immediately easy task, shall I say.
Every level has to be working in sync with every other level, right?
If not, it's both time and money that becomes a consequence if you're not. So yeah, that's the constant battle with any enterprise, whether it's a charitable organization or a manufacturing organization. It's all about alignment of people and alignment of mission.
So someone comes to work for the company, how long should they expect to work for the company? As long as they want?
Well, in this business, there is a lot of what they call master shipbuilders, which is a shipbuilder that has spent 40 years in that company. Obviously, I was one since I passed that 40-year mark. There are those that might serve 40 years in a single job function, and there's those such as myself that kind of ran to many fires and worked in many dimensions of that. But they're all master shipbuilders in any capacity that they show if they do that. But there is a high number of tenured people in that company or in the business, because it is, frankly, it is so people-centric, and people, the relationships that people live with each day are one of the more significant things that gets the job done.
So I think I shared with you this statement that I have about people, and I'd like your reaction to it. I see that there is a persistent residual culture of values that persist because it resides in the relationships of the people. And I see that in particularly large companies where you're very dependent upon a lot of people working in sync with one another.
That's right.
And I was thinking in building a ship, that's really essential. So how do you respond to that?
I would tell you at every strata, from the lowest level, foreman and his crew have a relationship. As you go up to higher tiers of organizational stratas, if you will, having a mission, your own mission with your company lies on three principles that you frequently describe, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that aligns with, I learned, and I've learned from so many people. I've learned from my mother, which you have as well, and I have taken a thirst from learning from the others. Secondhand lesson is the best one you'll ever learn, the one that I don't have to learn firsthand. But one of the things that I guess I followed it as practice, but ultimately got reinforced by an opportunity to have a discussion with a Secretary of Navy, and he ultimately became the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Richardson. And Admiral Richardson described some of his a process called command guidance. And his view was, and of course he was sitting there at the very top, and how does he run sailors? How do they know what to do? And his command guidance, he said, should be something you could put on a single index card with a few salient points on what's important to the mission. Because your people have to go execute that mission, whether they are under your guidance or, in his case, maybe undersea without communication. So that command guidance was always something that stuck with me. And I had an opportunity in the late 2000s in a role that I was filling where I had to hire 500 people to come in and do a particular shipbuilding task. And this was about a 3-year process. So how do I bring 500 people into an organization, expect them to perform? None of them come in with the shipbuilding art or skill, but bring them in and have them understand a week into the job how they're going to go execute. So I had a session where we were bringing in 10, 15 people a week, every week. And we'd do the orientation, and then Friday morning I would sit down personally with every one of them. These were hourly workers, and at the time I was a director of this trade organization. And I had 4 things that was important to them. First off was understanding, the mission that we accomplish, understanding safety, understanding quality, and then understanding, most importantly, was a continuous improvement mindset. That while you're coming in here to learn, I need your mind open. Not just coming here looking and watching and following everything just verbatim. I want to understand what you think and what you perceive. So this was giving these folks survival skills in a big, heavy industrial environment, but also trying to set the stage for them to unlock what they brought to the table that might be different. So this was a very powerful.
I like that very much.
It did, and I will tell you, even now, 15 years after that, I've long left that position, and I'm doing a little consultant work in there. I'm still seeing some of those folks that I hired down there that, resonate, and whether they remember what I told them, they remember me telling them something, and it's gratifying.
You made a difference to them.
I believe that.
In how they entered into the community of the company.
Right.
I mean, I'm using
Yeah,
that
you
term.
don't have time any longer, and especially in the current work climate where employees you're never going to see these master shipbuilders like you and I have experienced in the past. You know, they're migratory species. So how do you bring a employee in for a shorter tenured position and have them contributing and have them productive? You can't wait like in the past where you worked with an old guy for 10 years and then he gave you the tools and you went forward. Don't have that time. So you got to be able to agile, you got to be able to mobilize their thoughts right out of the gate.
So how do managers become proficient in being able to do what you just described? What is it that
Repeated, you know, I'll tell you how this particular thing, I shared with you those 4 tenets that were important for me to cascade to a new employee. Those 4 tenets were the exact same 4 tenets that I used in my business plan, which I reported to my vice president as how we managed our business. I talked to those 4 tenets in weekly dialogue, monthly dialogue with my seniors and all of my leadership team. We all talked in those 4 dimensions. If we weren't talking in those 4 dimensions, we were talking about football or families, which is all good, but it helped that you had the entry-level person coming in understanding about business mission, safety, quality, and continuous improvement. It was important to them, it was important to me, and all through our enterprise. So that's how we shared that mission.
That reminds me of the work of anthropologist Pierre Clastres, who back in the 60s and 70s had done his anthropological study in the Amazon. And he was studying these tribes, these small tribes, and he discovered what he calls the nature of the chief, and the chief is elected by the tribe. Chief has no power, cannot do anything to cause anyone to do anything, but the chief has really 2 roles. One is to generate the things that the tribe needs to survive on.
Okay.
Where they're going to get their food, all that sort of stuff. But the most important thing he does is he constantly tells the tribe who they are, and by reminding them who they are, they discover who they're not, and that's what creates the cohesion within the tribe, because and he can only do that by his own rhetorical persuasion. And it sounds like that's a major part of what you were doing there. Was you took these 4 tenets and you were basically saying, if you can work within these four ideas, you can have a very good career here at the company.
And survive and contribute.
That's
and
right.
Again, that command guidance, it comes down to that. So it helps. And people, I've used that same fund in some private, board work that I do for nonprofits, and it's a whole different series of missions in there. But if everybody aligns around the missions, then when you walk out the door, if the subordinates and the staff understand what's important, they'll make the right decisions.
That's right. That's right. So, how do you see the leadership of an organization like that? What is leadership in an environment where it's very complex, and your timeline is very long? I mean, we were talking earlier about the retrofitting of a ship could be 60 months or something like that. So what does leadership look like from the top down in that role?
Well, there's a principle that I try to follow, which is called inverting the leadership pyramid. It's not mine. I am repeating someone's work there, but it follows my mantra where, as a director or whatever of the organization, I work for those underneath me rather than a diverse that. They're not working for me, I work for them, and I make sure I'm adamant about that what can I do for you today, that their problems are my problems, not the tactical operation.
So leadership is facilitation of the people that are responsible to you.
That's right.
And you have to provide the conditions and the material and the ideas and the support they need to do the best job they can do.
It is. And there's always exercises in prioritization that tend to distract. You know, they're in a very dynamic environment, wherever it is. You have limited amount of time and only so much intellectual capacity to execute something day in and day out. The ability to prioritize and understand it is, you know, again, there's a couple little three things I always talk about called it ants, skunks, and bears.
Yeah.
And, you know, ants, skunks, and bears, when you're looking at work you got to do, and this was a young superintendent. She worked for me and she was just an amazing lady. And I went into her office the day that I hired her, and she'd moved in over the weekend. When I went into the office looked like somebody had been there for 40 years. I mean, there was papers everywhere, and she had this old cork board with 3 Post-it notes on it, and it said ants, skunks, and bears. And I said, Julie, I said, what in the world do you got going on there? And she goes, that's my prioritization. If I'm at a picnic, an ant will annoy me, a skunk will ruin my day, but a bear will eat me. And that's how I prioritize. People come at me with ants and skunks, I will address them once I've got the bears done. So it helps for people to see the forest, you know, divide the forest into trees, right?
Yeah. I like that.
So yeah, she was, I always give her props for that. She's a wonderful lady, and she's building ships down in Louisiana, but great lady.
That's very cool. You know, we were talking about the length of time that these ships stay in service.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it struck me that time is a relative thing in that regard. And so you build a new ship, you know, and it takes what, 5 years, 6 years to build a new ship?
Yeah.
And then
or longer.
Or longer. I mean, what, 10 years? Could it take 10 years?
When you start buying long lead material, yeah.
I mean, 10 years is a long time before you deliver your product.
Yeah.
And so how do we, I mean, we live in a very immediate oriented culture now, where what is it that you're going to give me right now? You know, and I demand it right now.
Yep.
And here you're working in a culture where we'll deliver this in a decade, and everybody will be happy, you know. And so how is it that we reorient our sense of time to allowing things to take longer, so that we're a little bit more at peace with the process, and we're a little bit more prepared to allow for change in the process, all that goes on. What's your sense of that?
Well, I might change that up a little bit with you regarding the time constraint, since you have people that are working and you're trying to direct or coach immediate actions.
Yeah.
You know, mechanic Fred down in the bottom of a bilge of a ship, tightening up 8 bolts, 8 nuts, and he's got 7 washers. He's dropped a washer somewhere. He's at a decision point there. I gotta climb out of this tank that's 45 feet and go order me another washer, or is he gonna put that nut on that 8 stud, tighten it down without the washer? Well, his immediate action there is the job is done. But that ship could be around, in the case of some, 25 or 30 years, in the case of others, over 50 years that valve is in place. And if he is executed today, an incomplete or incorrect quality issue, that thing could cascade or manifest itself into a problem that his child would suffer, that he doesn't even have.
Or maybe even a grandchildren.
And that's part of one of the connections that we made at the early people, is that the work that you're doing today has decades of assessment of your work that's behind it.
So you have a generational perspective of things.
Yes, we do.
There's many generations of people at the plant working, but it'll also be serving many generations of, in this case,
sailors,
American citizens and sailors, and see, that's exactly the way I think, and a lot of that has come because of our family, because we have been, as my father,
Yeah.
accused me and my oldest son, of being ancestry worship, but it's not ancestry worship. It's really learning from the previous generations. Our grandfather, we call Pap,
Yep.
he taught us a lot of things,
Yep.
and we learned a lot of things from him, because he was a wise man. In all respects, he was a wise man, and so we carry what he gave us forward into the future. And hanging out with your family yesterday, I saw how that wisdom that our parents had and our grandparents had, and I'm suggesting our great grandparents had, is being translated and transferred on to our children's generation, our grandchildren's generation, and our great grandchildren's generation. And so all of a sudden, we see that there is an effect across 6 generations right there
in front of us.
Right there in front of us. It's a beautiful thing. And so the question is, can a business, particularly a large business like shipbuilding, can a business see itself in that kind of generational context?
There's, as in the shipbuilding, as I mentioned, the art, science, and witchcraft associated with executing these major projects, there is so much tribal knowledge and tribal culture that is established in the organization. If the organization is not proud of their work, if the organization is not demonstrating that, then you can see that. And, I can look at something that you and I were talking about yesterday about walking into an organization and taking an objective assessment of the people that are in it.
Yeah.
And using them, the terminology, when I walk through this area and I look at the workers, do they reflect to me their work environment? Do they reflect squatters, renters, or owners? And clearly you want owners of the business. You want to see people that own their work, own their, they've got a voice, they're participating, and they are part of the process, foolhardy, as opposed to throwing a drink bottle on the floor and not worrying about missing the trash can. And so those are gauges for leaders to come through and make observations on where the heads are at of their employees.
And how do you measure that when you're just interviewing an employee who's a potential employee? How do you measure that?
Well, you set the expectations right there, and some of those early interviews that I was taking was really going beyond to ensure that a director was talking to every hourly person coming in there and making sure that they understood my expectations. But again, if the foreman, it doesn't matter what a senior leader says to an entry-level person or whatever, it doesn't matter what the CEO of an organization says, because to a individual, their boss is the voice of that company.
Yeah.
So if I have all of the finest motives and pure and simple and, this is how the world exists, and they got a horse's ass of a foreman who's not leading the way, then that's what the company looks like to them. Their first tier of boss. It's what makes your observations of your leaders to be so vital, as opposed to just taking the reactions or consequences of a subordinate employee that failed and not stepping it up a level above and understand why they failed. It's not just because Ed Brenegar, killed a job or whatever. What was the circumstances around the environment you're in? And that's where you got to be looking.
You've had a really wide experience. You are a master shipbuilder, but you're much more than that. And you have gained a tremendous amount of knowledge about the way businesses operate, organizations operate, the culture that inhabits those, the kinds of people that come to a business. And in that context, what do you see as the greatest challenge facing businesses today?
Connecting to people's hearts.
Huh. Say something about that. What does that mean?
Walk into a Chick-fil-A.
Yeah?
You ever had bad service when you go into a Chick-fil-A?
Never.
Never. And these are not highly paid individuals. These are people that are slopping chicken, giving you a chicken sandwich in an aluminum foil bag. But what, in some of the work that I did before, doing some of the research and classes I've taken, as far as, managerial stuff post-college, some of the examinations of an operational foreman, at a Chick-fil-A, a friend of mine, one of my vice presidents went into a Chick-fil-A and personally kind of asked the manager to come over here and have a conversation about how he made things work. He says, why are your people so good? The manager told my VPs, and this is not some corporate hoo-ha, getting the word from headquarters. This is a Chick-fil-A restaurant where my VP went and asked this manager, come sit down and have a conversation. And that manager said, how do you make these folks work? How do these folks work as well? And he says, because he says, I care more about them than I care about you, is what he told me.
I like that.
It's powerful. He cares more than the dollar that the VP was getting there. So that's a connection of the heart. So that's how you do it. You got to get in people's hearts and make sure you prove, you walk the talk.
If you live in the southeast quarter of the United States, there's another restaurant chain that you encounter. It's called Waffle House.
Yes.
And it's a 24-hour. Most of them are 24 hours a day, and they have a similar kind of experience. You walk in and they say hello to you, and I was in one a couple of weeks ago. And I'm sitting there and I'm eating my eggs and bacon and drinking my cup of coffee and doing some note taking, and in the door walks these 5 or 6 Waffle House people in uniform.
Okay.
They're not in the uniform of the people behind the counter. They're all in nice shirts and slacks, and they come in as a team, and
Yes.
I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? So I pulled 2 of them over and said, what's going on? It says, we're a training team, and we're here to teach training to some of our people, and we're just going to use this location as the location where we're going to do the training. And one of the guys was the regional manager, and another, this woman was a senior vice president, and I thought, this is just really fantastic. And so I called the woman who is the manager over. And so I said to them, I says, I want you to know that she's really great at what she does, because she always greets me well, but she's also doing a really good job of making sure the people that work for her are doing good job. And I just want you to know that, because I want her to know that the public appreciates what she's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave them both my card. I said, I'd love to have you on the podcast. So I still got to
recognition.
I still got to get still got to get them to do that. But that recognition is really important, and that's a key thing that we do. I'm doing on the podcast, which is I'm interviewing people, and I want them to be recognized by me. I want them to be appreciated by me, and I want to acknowledge the things that they do that really make a difference, that matters. And obviously, what you're doing is that thing. So I have one more question to ask, and
Okay.
I typically ask this of my guests.
Okay.
Where do you find hope for the future in the world, or do you find hope?
Absolutely.
So where do you find that? Tell us a little bit about that.
I find it in my children. I find it in everywhere I look around. I feel very positive. There's it's the glass half full or glass half empty. I believe I'm a positive person, and I believe in, I guess you will, a synergistic relationship of maintaining positivity, and we should all be leaning in each other. There's a little too much animosity and too much division in society, and if I didn't believe in making a difference, I'd cower in a fetal position over there somewhere and just cry. But I won't.
Well, there are a lot of people that are.
There are.
And so how do we help those who are over there cowering in a fetal position?
Prop them up, give them a hug, or a boot in the ass. I do not apologize for, an organization if you're not doing your job. I have no qualms about.
So it's really helping people know where they stand
Sure.
in the relationship they have with either you as a
Recognition.
person or the company as an entity.
Correct. It's recognition, whether it's positive or negative. But if you tacitly see something going on that is not right in your organization and you walk by, you've just endorsed it.
I see that one of the things that leaders do for other people is that they help them gain a sense of belief that their life can matter. And I think that's a gift that we give to people. I don't think it's naturally generated. I think it's something that we give, and we need to give more of that away. And I think if we do that, then the world will be a better place.
Bravo Zulu.
Any last words?
No, sir. Glad to have you, cuz.
Thank you, cuz. It's been very, very good.
All right.
And I appreciate you very much.
You bet.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with my cousin Stewart. He shares some things that I think if you were able to grasp hold of them, maybe even write them down, maybe I'll put them in the show notes, I think you will find that they will be beneficial. I think the most significant thing that he said and what we kind of said together was that leadership, organizational leadership today, must be about facilitating the leadership of others. When I speak of all leadership beginning with personal initiative to create impact that makes a difference that matters, I'm talking about creating a structure for that in an organization, not merely motivating people to do it. Because if the structure doesn't allow for initiative, doesn't allow for people to start things and try things and explore things and discover things, if it doesn't allow for people to step over the line, to step out of their lane and begin to talk with people who seemingly have nothing to do with their role in the company, but actually have something to share that might be beneficial to the person who is seeking new answers, if there is not the ability to do that, if the structure restricts that sort of thing, then the leadership is really weak and poor. So if you want strong leadership, you facilitate the leadership in others. And I think this is what our conversation was about today. And I hope that hits home for you. And I hope that if you want to know more about that, that you'll reach out to me, because I'd love to have a conversation with you about that, because we're in a moment of time where this is essential for many companies to survive the changes that we're in. You have to motivate, you have to equip, you have to encourage, and you have to facilitate the leadership of others. And if you can't do that, then you're going to have a less than stellar record as a leader. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to Substack. On Substack, I'm writing about life, time in reality. It's an extension of the spectacle of the real. I'm going beyond describing what is the spectacle of the real to what is it that we're to do. So I'm really wanting to facilitate your leadership as you deal with what is simulation, what is an unreal world, what is hyperreal, and what is the real world, where you can demonstrate that you have something to offer and you can see the effects of your actions. This is what this new series of Time and Reality is all about. And it will produce not only a book of the theory, that theory in description as I'm writing on Substack, but I'm also going to write a novel where I present these ideas in human form, in a story, which I hope will make a difference that matters. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time here on the Annie Network Podcast. Bye-bye.